The air inside the freighter Glaucus tasted of burnt copper and salted fears, the kind of tang that clings to the lungs when a ship runs beyond its rated tolerances for too long. Hania Miles, once a propulsion officer in the Thalassian Navy and now senior mechanic to a ragtag refugee convoy, braced herself against an exposed plasma conduit as the Glaucus lurched into another micro-jump. She watched, pressure warnings bloom amber across the maintenance panel, like bruises on a screen. Another 5-second hop, she muttered, syncing her data pad with the freighter's heartbeat. Then the capacitors will slag for real. Through the open hatch, flickering corridor lights revealed families huddled in the ship's spine, bundled in thermal blankets stitched from sailcloth and ration packaging. Someone was humming a nursery rhyme about undrowned islands, the melody warping with every hull shudder. Moments earlier, the convoy had slipped away from the ruins of Pharaoh Station, leaving behind a column of rising fire and the triumphant silhouette of a hegemony cruiser. What remained of the Thalassian Republic, the scientists, teachers, dock workers, and scribes, was packed into 5 worn freighters: Glaucus, Shirat, Calypso, Lumen, and the medical barge Veil. Their destination was the drift safe of Quinala Reach, a cluster of hidden asteroids 3 hops beyond official charts, if they made it. Hania's captain, Malik Jara, knifed into the engineering bay. Sweat darkened his collar. His prosthetic left leg, assembled from scavenged actuators, clicked with every stride. Helm confirms the Hegemony Task Force closed the first gap in under 7 minutes, he barked. 2 light cruisers, 3 frigates, and a hunter-drone screen. They're tracking our emissions. We can either vent atmosphere to mask the signature or jump blind into uncharted gravity wells. Neither gives us more than half an hour. We don't need half an hour, Hania answered, wiping a streak of coolant from her forehead. Give me 19 minutes. Then prep the convoy to drop all decoys on my mark. Malik's gaze hardened. You're activating the storeroom? If what Dr. Odoforo sealed in Hold 7 still works, it's the only card we have left. He caught her by the elbow, drawing her into the corridor's dim hush. Those torpedoes were never cleared. The Admiralty buried the project after a single field test. They buried everything after the capital fell, she reminded him. But the dark water torpedoes still exist. And you saw what they did at Neruda Gulf. They dove into metaspace like fish through surf. No trails. No telltales. If they can swim through vacuum, they can punch through a sensor grid just the same. We're a refugee convoy, Hania. Using weapons from Ghost's laboratories paints us as pirates, not survivors. We're alive precisely because we still know how to fight, she replied, voice low but urgent. Load the torpedoes into the ballast tubes. Prep targeting relays in every ship, so they launch as one school. We strike once, hard, then disappear. Malik hesitated, eyes flitting toward the families clustered at bulkhead intersections, the teenagers reciting evacuation drills, the infants mewling for warmth. How many will it save? All of them, Hania vowed, or none. There's no middle spine here. A pulse of hull stress snapped through the deck plates, punctuating the debate. Malik exhaled, lifted his wrist comm. Convoy captains, this is Jara. Code Talion. Silence followed, taut as a drawn bowstring. Then acknowledgments chimed across the channel. Talion meant they were no longer simply running. They were prepared to bite. 2 decks below, in the cavernous Hold 7, Hania keyed in the override codes she'd memorized during the station's final hours. The pneumatic doors shrieked apart, revealing rows of coffin-like canisters glistening with frost. Each bore a painted sigil, a midnight fish leaping over a crescent moon. Dark water. She slid her hand across the first shell, feeling its chilled skin hum an eerie resonance that made teeth ache. In theory, the torpedo's core housed a droplet of dimensionally inverted fluid, a pseudo-water that refused ordinary physics. In practice, once armed, the weapon surrounded itself with an exosphere of vacuum foam, allowing it to accelerate in any medium sea, sky, or deep space, according to hydrodynamic principles. The Navy's engineers called it swimming the void. Don't think about the math, she whispered, recalling the head of the project, Dr. Odafoa, as explosions thundered overhead during their exultation from the shipyards. Just aim where you want them to land, and let them choose how to arrive. With the help of 2 deckhands, she hoisted the first torpedo onto a grav sled and guided it to the ballast tube. The bay doors yawned open to star-speckled black. She locked the arming pin, and a small green LED winked acknowledgement. Hungry. The countdown began. 19 minutes, 20,000 kilometers aft, aboard the hegemony cruiser Savant of Discipline, Commander Rene Calder watched sensor patterns cascade down a holographic sphere. Convoy is bleeding heat, he noted with professional detachment. They're draining the air scrubbers, jettisoning scrap metal to confuse mass scans. His XO, Lieutenant Corona Ryle, flicked her wrist, zooming past the decoys. Primitive, but it will buy them some delta. Recommend we widen our drone net and cut off their next vector. Agreed, Calder gestured. But bring the tether cannons online. The refugees carry more than bodies. We want their archives intact. The Directorate covets those research logs. Ryle executed the command. None aboard Savant doubted the convoy's significance. Barrel Station's labs were rumored to contain data on haptic subspace and biological quantum meshes, things worth more than a dozen shattered colonies. The Thalassians had evacuated that data, disguised it among everyday cargo. Retrieve it, the hegemony would choke the last embers of rebellion. Lose it, and the Republic might reignite. Sir, the censor chief cut in. Something's happening. Cluster-wide encryption burst across all 5 freighters. Calder leaned forward. Put it on the main. Encryption burst was a gentle description. The convoy's comms disappeared behind a shimmering veil of random noise. Then, briefly, a pattern emerged. 3 pulses, pause. 1 pulse, pause. 2 pulses. Calder's heart tightened. Signal analysis? Unknown, replied the chief. Possibly just a hash collision. Or a weapon code, Calder muttered. Before he could expand the thought, the noise ceased. The convoy drifted, engines winking out as though surrendering to inertia. Ryle frowned. They cut power completely. Heat sinks show minimal bleed. They're turning into hulks. Or lures. Calder straightened. Hold position relative. No one moves until we— Contact! A chorus of alarms erupted. Multiple microsignatures detached from the 3rd freighter. Velocity is low. No correction. Velocity is climbing exponentially. 2, 4, 6,000 meters per second. On the main hollow, tiny fish-shaped icons blossomed from Calypso's belly, weaving sinuously as if propelled by ocean currents no one else could see. They arced, not in straight ballistic lines, but along fluid curves that made algorithmic pursuit futile. Ryle sucked in a breath. They're acting like they can maneuver in 0G without thrusters. Calder's gut chilled. He remembered one classified briefing, a decade past, about a torpedo project scrapped for violating conservation laws. Dark water, he whispered. Helm, evasive pattern Gamma now. But space is wide, and torpedoes that ignore its rules are wider still. Aboard the Glaucus, Hanya listened to the battle feed piped through engineering, words intercut with static and sudden screams. She had designated Savant of Discipline as primary. The head of the Arrow and 9 torpedoes hunted it like wolves after a bleeding stag. Through the remaining torpedoes split among the frigates, threading their vacuum currents with lethal grace. She pictured the pseudo-water skin peeling back upon target impact, letting exotic pressure waves smash through armored plating as though it were thin ice. There would be no melting, no spare seconds for countermeasures. The hegemony crew would simply watch hulls ripple inward, then find themselves adrift in ruptured compartments, lungs clinging to dying air. Around her, reactor vibration steadied. Fright gives way to focus. Deckhands watched their leader gauge the impact of her choice. Only Malik lingered at the threshold, arms folded. "Reports?" he asked. "3 frigates disabled," she replied without turning. "Cruiser Savant took 2 direct hits. Final status unclear. Our sensor slice is limited by passive masking." Any retaliation? None significant yet. Drone screen broke formation. Some got shredded by their own cruiser's shrapnel. They didn't know what to shoot at. And the convoy? No injuries, she said softly. Not one. When she finally faced him, she expected condemnation. Instead, she saw weary relief. I never thought I'd bless a weapon stamped experimental, Malik admitted. But we might just slip the leash. He reached for his comm. All ships, spool drives, prepare burn for Quinala Reach. Full silence protocol after jump. 30 seconds. Hania keyed her console to monitor the torpedo telemetry. The last 3 warheads were skimming the debris field, reorienting toward anything still transmitting hegemony IFF. She hoped they'd run out of fuel before striking an escape pod, but she had no reins on them now. Dark water ran on algorithms older than the war, older than her fear. Commander Calder floated amid tangles of severed cables and fractured plating, atmosphere hissing around him in freezing gusts. Emergency bulkheads had slammed shut, sealing the bridge in a coffin of smoke and sputtering fire. Half his crew were dead. The other half were dragging injured away from the sparking command dais. Ryle, her uniform torn and face streaked with blood, clutched the sensor console. The convoy is moving again, she rasped. Jump signature spiking. Calder coughed, tasting iron. Can we pursue? No drives, Ryle said. Gaze hollow. Power relays are slagged. We have comms. We can call the outer net for intercept, but the nearest hegemony line is 2 hours out. Calder squeezed his eyes shut. In 2 hours, rebels could vanish into any of 100 dark pockets. The experimental torpedoes, who approved that design, would haunt every fleet officer's nightmares by dawn. Send the distress, he ordered, voice raw, and flag the convoy's weapons data as highest retrieval priority. Directorate must know we face dark weather. Rael nodded. And if they ask for casualties? Calder surveyed the ruined bridge, the flares of automated extinguishers, the still forms beside shattered holographics. Tell them the refugees taught us a new law, he said, swallowing the taste of failure. Even the hunted can drown the sea. The jump to Quinala Reach bruised Hania's stomach and blurred her vision, but they emerged inside the translucent shell of a hollowed asteroid, lights dimmed to twilight blue. Atmo pumps kicked in, flooding the cavern with breathable air salvaged from ancient mining stations. The other freighters materialized moments later, alignment jittery but intact. Cheering rang through the audio relays. Some people wept openly. Others sang the Song of Open Ports, an anthem once reserved for Navy homecomings. Hania allowed herself a slow exhale. Yet victory carried an aftertaste. She imagined savant survivors calling for rescue, their bodies drifting among scraps of hull that glittered like black ice. She did not hate them specifically, but the war made no room for sympathy, measured in shiploads. In the main docking cavern, temporary shelters unfolded like origami barracks. Medics guided the weary to cots. Children chased slivers of artificial starlight. Hania walked along gangways lined with crates labeled foodstuff, medsup, tech core. But she knew the most precious crate still rested in Glaucus's hold. The last torpedo, unarmed, a silent promise wrapped in fish-black plating. She found Dr. Ottofoa inside a converted workshop, calibrating a brittle piece of instrumentation. The scientist's hair, once meticulously braided, had come undone. Grease smudged her cheek. She looked up, recognition shining. You fired them, Ottofoa said gently. I did. And they swam, Hania replied. The word felt both triumphal and tragic. Ottofoa's eyes moistened. The Republic owed you safer paths, not those monsters. They saved us. They changed us, the scientist corrected. Dark water was always more than ordnance. It was a proof that reality bends to new songs. Sometimes the melody is mercy. Sometimes it's a dirge. Hania pressed her palms to the workbench. We can't refit the Navy, but we have one torpedo left. If the hegemony tracks us, I'll fire again. At their carriers or at their planets, whatever it takes to buy time for these people to breathe free. Adafawa traced the rim of her mug. Promise me you'll weave the next melody carefully. Once the ocean of stars knows a predator can swim without water, many will try to mimic its fins. I promise to build something better than fear, Hania said. She believed it. Mostly. Months passed in Quinala Reach. The refugees hollowed new tunnels and seeded algae gardens under spectrum lamps. Children learned to play tag in zero-G shafts, using magnetized gloves for abrupt turns. Elders recorded oral histories, embedding them in crystal drives. And in a hangar far from casual eyes, Hania oversaw the slow refurbishment of the last Darkwater torpedo. She dismantled the arming core and reconfigured its guidance stack, replacing kill algorithms with beacon protocols. The torpedo would no longer seek warm hulls. It would seek lost vessels in the void, slip past debris fields, and deliver humanitarian caches, medicine, water reclamation kits, encrypted libraries of art and science. Where the hegemony blockade strangled isolated colonies, the Darkwater messenger could swim without permission. Malik visited during final testing. Ready to launch? Ready to rewrite the fable, Anya answered, sealing the torpedo in a sleek canister painted sunrise gold instead of midnight black. Let's see if an instrument born for violence can choose another current. They released it beyond the asteroid belt. Observers tracked its path, only for an instant. Then it vanished into vacuum like an idea released from shame. Somewhere near the battered moon of Vera Nix, a merchant cutter limped beneath the guns of a hegemony patrol, crippled and cornered. Its crew prepared surrender codes, hearts heavy. But the torpedo arrived first, slipping through the patrol's shadow. It nestled against the cutter's stern hatch, unfolded a docking tube, and delivered crates labeled Courage. Inside rested antibiotics, filtration tablets, and a patchwork flag of the Thalashan Republic, stitched by children in Quinala Reach. The torpedo, its cargo spent, drifted on, unarmed, unstoppable, swimming the vacuum in search of the next suffocating silence. News of the golden fish spread by whisper and pirate channel, a myth of salvation gliding through the dark, that refugees once wielded impossible weapons and then taught them to heal. For every fortress crushed, a harbor reopened. For every fear born, a hope answered. And Hania Miles, sitting on a ledge in the asteroid's night garden, listened to those rumors ripple back across space, and wondered if perhaps the darkest water merely waited for someone brave enough to teach it light.